Get ready for the famous story of when God commanded Moses to split the Red Sea.
And we talk about manna and that dependence, a really cool story from John, and what it means to sustain. All that this week on Real Talk. Hello and welcome to another episode of Real Talk. Come follow me. Hi, John.
Hi, Ganel-Lyn.
Exodus 14 through 17.
Yeah.
We've got some good stuff.
The Red Sea.
Yeah, and manna.
Yeah. So much good stuff.
A lot of good stuff. Just a quick review, I think, is worth from last week's discussion and what we were discussing with the children of Israel, being prepared with the plagues and being prepared really to want to leave.
Being motivated to leave.
Yeah. This week's not specific around Exodus 13, but I think verses 21 and 22 of chapter 13 are helpful. That the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of a cloud to lead them the way, and by the night in a pillar of fire to give them light to go by day and night. And then in verse 22, he took not away the pillar of the cloud by day, nor the pillar of fire by night from before the people. And I just love that promise that he's going to go before us and he's going to prepare a way. And I think as we start this conversation this week, we're going to see really specific evidences of where God has literally opened the way or provided.
And hopefully our listeners and our viewers will have similar experiences where you're able to identify in your lifetimes where God has clearly just opened the way for you.
But this wilderness experience, the children of Israel, like us, are going to have to keep remembering it, right? And remembering that promise. So in Exodus 14, I think it's of note that the Book of Mormon, 1 Nephi 17, and Doctrine and Covenants 8:3 both reference that the Red Sea literally was a sea that opened up with walls of water.
Yeah.
Because there are some interpretations that maybe this really wasn't the cool miracle that we think it was.
Yeah, when I was looking for some sort of modern day potential explanations for this, none of them gave me an option for walls of water on both sides. And so, whether or not the narrative has changed through the years doesn't really matter because we know God has the power to straight split the sea if he needs to. And we've seen that in our lives with just, miracles.
Right, and in modern day Scripture, we have revelation that says, no, it really was what you think it is.
Almost like God didn't want to be shortchanged on this one.
Like you say, he was flexing, right?
Yeah,
Maybe
he
a little bit.
He was flexing a little bit.
Okay, so here we are in Exodus 14, verse 21, and Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night. And I love that idea of that the wind, just like with the Jaredites, right? That the wind is helpful. I live in Lehigh. It is always windy. I am not a fan of the wind, but in this situation, the wind really did blow it all that night and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And then verse 22, and the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left. And I just think, is there a situation in our lives where we can really see where God maybe was the wind and he blew things out of our lives in a way that allowed us to walk forward? I'm thinking of, I host another show and it's ending. And having that end, sometimes when we have things that we love end, it feels like it's sad and we don't want to let it go. But I've really seen where the Lord is kind of blowing some things out of my schedule a little bit right now. And so I'm trying to embrace it and take steps forward. Because the children of Israel could have easily stayed on the shore and said, we're not so sure about that wall. Is it going to hold?
Kind of some trepidation stepping down into that.
And I think in our own lives where has the Lord blown something out of the way, but then it's our job to, in faith, go forward. What are your thoughts? Have you had an experience?
I know you challenged me to think about that.
I gave you a heads up.
No, you gave me a heads up. But for me, what came to my mind earlier just today was, I feel like I've been walking on dry ground for 30 years. That's what came to my mind. And I feel like I'm still in that tunnel, so to speak. But I'm on dry ground. I mean, I've been very open about sort of the awakening that happened to me about 30 years ago. And I don't feel like I've been in muddy, swampy, I feel like I've been on dry ground for 30 years. They still have to walk. They still have to traverse this this canyon, the sea canyon, right? I'm presuming it wasn't that easy. So that's kind of how it all of a sudden became applicable to me, sort of metaphorical. He opened it up when I was 18, and I've been on dry ground ever since, and it's been pretty miraculous and pretty crazy.
I don't think this is I know it's not a competition, but that's a way better answer than I gave. So I'm glad you shared it, because I think you're right. Like, my whole life feels like there were so many times where I could have been like, this is too scary, I'm going back. But I love that idea of that you have started with your conversion experience that you've shared here on Real Talk, and it's been a continual walking on that dry ground.
It's dry ground. Dry ground being a metaphor for, stable ground.
Right.
Doesn't mean that everything's been fun.
Like last week when I called all the plagues fun and they were not fun.
Everything's awesome. No, it's still a journey, man. But I'm on dry ground, and that's how it feels.
I think that this is a segue that just came to me, that like to stay on that dry ground, that sometimes we have to keep choosing to traverse and not like turn around and bolt back to the shore.
Right.
And we can see the walls of water, and we have felt the wind, and maybe the wind continued, right, to keep that water up. So maybe it was like head down and you're right
going forward.
One of the things that helps me do that is praise anthems. And I love praise music, and I think the beginning of Exodus 15 verses 1 through 3 are really the beginnings of the verses of this praise song. And I'm not going to sing it, so
Dang it.
Please don't send hate mail to the show, because we don't want to ruin...
Well, we might release a single later this season.
We should not ever do that, but I will lip sync it, so maybe you can sing it and I'll lip sync John singing.
Or maybe we should make it a contest for our viewers.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Whoever can put Exodus 15, the entire chapter,
that is
music,
a brilliant idea.
That sounds good.
Right, not the bad ones.
Good luck.
Yeah. So verse 1, then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song unto the Lord, and spake, saying, I will sing unto the Lord, for he hath triumphant gloriously. The horse and his rider hath he thrown into the sea, which I think is like, okay, God is not playing around. How about that, right?
Yeah.
Verse 2, the Lord is my strength and song, and he is become my salvation. He is my God, and I will prepare him an habitation, my father's God, and I will exalt him. And then verse 3, the Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. And I just think, what a powerful anthem to visualize, helping the children of Israel go forward and have courage.
With confidence that he's got our back.
Right. So I'm going to share one of my favorite anthems.
Okay, I want to hear.
My praise songs, I have a ton, but as of today, one of my favorites when I'm feeling like that well of faith is low is for King and Country. Anything for King and Country.
Seriously.
Yeah. We wanted them to be our theme song for this episode, but
we tried to get them on as guests, but they were busy.
Yeah, we wanted them to sing the theme song for Real Talk, but it didn't work.
Just kidding, we didn't contact them.
We didn't. But if you're listening for King and Country, open invitation, and we would love to have you on a Friends episode, right? Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yes, it would be amazing.
Okay, so one of their songs is one of my favorites, God Only Knows. And God only knows what you've been through.
Again, it's your favorite.
God only knows what they say about you. God only knows the real you. But there's a kind of love that God only knows. God only knows what you've been through. God only knows what they say about you. God only knows the real you. There's a kind of love that God only knows. And I just love the idea that, like, God is mindful. He's mindful of the children of Israel. He's mindful of us. He's mindful of our hurts and when people reject us, and his love is pure. What's your favorite anthem song?
Again, so many.
Yeah.
Because I really love, praise music or Christian rock or whatever you want to call it. And this one is by an artist named Big Daddy Weave.
Oh.
Kind of cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, his song, I Am Redeemed, is so beautiful, and I'm just kind of looking forward to Easter on this one.
A little teaser for next week.
Easter. Yep. It says this, seems like all I can see is the struggle, haunted by ghosts that lived in my past, bound up in shackles of all my failures, wondering how long this is going to last. Then you look at this prisoner and say to me, son, stop fighting a fight that's already been won. I am redeemed. You set me free, so I'll shake off these heavy chains and wipe away every stain. Now I am not who I used to be. I am redeemed. I just love it. I love the past tense of it all. Like he's stuck. He's so worried about his future, and God says, the victory's already won, buddy. What are you still doing fighting that? Just, you're redeemed. I got you. Trust in that, and let's move forward together.
We know how it's going to end. You're going to win.
We know how this ends. I win. We win.
I think there's a theme in the scriptures. I don't think I know that God has made sure there's song and there's music, because sometimes music, I think, is the only way to express what's on my heart. Or I go to a church meeting and I'm not feeling any of the speakers or none of the whatever it took to get to church, but someone shares a musical number or we sing a hymn and somehow it settles me. We're going to jump.
Yeah, let's do it.
There's some murmuring. Heads up. It's going to happen because we're human, right? I think it's important to note, though, that we've talked about this on a previous season. When we were discussing Book of Mormon, there was a chance to really practice this principle of what is murmuring and what is feeling feelings. And I think sometimes in faith communities, we think the only way you look like you're in faith is that you never express fear or have feelings of fear or discouragement or sadness. And I believe God wants us to feel our feelings. Murmuring to me feels less productive. I think when we feel feelings, even if they're fear or sadness or discouragement or loneliness, it can help propel us if we are moving forward with it. And I think Elder Uchtdorf said this, as his covenant people, we need not be paralyzed by fear because bad things might happen. Instead, we can move forward with faith, courage, determination, and trust in God as we approach the challenges and opportunities ahead. He is referencing specifically Exodus 14, but I think so much of what I have had to practice this last year in my own life is that I like being in faith. I don't like having those other feelings. But when I don't feel those other feelings, I also shut off the good stuff. And so just maybe an invitation as we see the people starting to murmur as we go from Exodus 15 and 16, and they're wrestling with some stuff. It's easy for us to judge and go, why were they murmuring? Like, they're not slaves anymore, and there's not dead frogs around, so what's their problem? Maybe just counterbalance that with feel the feelings. And builders can be afraid, and murmurers get stuck. And so if you're feeling fear, it's okay. If you're in the middle of a wilderness experience, you're sick of your manna, not to be a spoiler of what we're going to talk about, but it's okay to have those feelings.
I like that concept of murmurers are stuck. That's so true. Whenever I've murmured in my life, I'm just stuck. And I just need to stop murmuring, feel the feelings, process the feelings, let them in, experience the whole spectrum of all those feelings, and just keep moving forward. Well, more murmuring, Exodus 16. Exodus 16, verses 2 and 3. The whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. To be fair, I don't know what this looks like. I don't know how many hundreds of thousands or millions of people are in this congregation.
Camping
estimates
in tents,
vary,
right?
but like, that's, so again, kind of try to think from their perspective, right? But they're having a rough time and they're all murmuring. Verse 3, the children of Israel said unto them, would to God, I wish we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt.
It was way better with all the lice.
I wish we had died in slavery when we sat by the flesh pots and we did eat bread to the full. You have brought us forth into the wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. All right, so
what's a flesh pot?
A flesh pot. That's an important clarification because these days a flesh pot has become known as a place where it's sort of a place where you go for sexual or immoral pleasure, right? That's not what we're talking about here. They're just literally referring to the pots that they used to cook their food in back in Egypt. And it really sounds like they're looking retrospectively with some rose-colored glasses here.
It was so much better.
It was so much better.
When we were slaves, it was so cool.
Slaves.
Because honestly, they were having food regularly.
And that's what I think they're longing for. I think that what they're not longing for the quality of food, the quantity of food. I think what they're not used to is the uncertainty.
Yes.
But I think that's the point. That's the point. God's trying to develop in them a codependence, a complete dependence on Him from day to day. And so he takes away the certainty and trying to almost like motivate them to depend on him more than they ever have before. And so he hears them. He's so merciful. He gives them manna every morning. Manna, translated, what is it, right? They don't even know what it is, but you can read more about that. Manna in the morning and quail meat at night. So merciful, but he doesn't allow them to store it. This is so counterintuitive to our modern mindset, if you think about
Especially in the church where we store food
Right,
and we prepare for the evidence of what might come, right?
So, I mean, there and then in society in general, right? It's retirement. We got it.
Certainty.
It's long-term investment, certainty. And here God seems to be restricting that, saying, no. Not that the steps we're taking these days aren't responsible and we should be doing that. But like, God is trying to prove a point with this generation, trying to develop a generation that's ready to inherit the promised land, right? And so he makes them dependent on him day after day after day. And I just made a note that transitioning into spiritual self-reliance, which is actually a complete dependence on God,
God reliance,
can be challenging.
Yeah.
Because it makes us very vulnerable to the point where we look back on a slave situation and we're like, oh, that was easier. Right? Because it is hard.
Because there was a knowing of like, this is how my day looks. I know my basic needs.
And all of a sudden, how's today going to look? Think about this, what Jesus taught in Matthew 6. We've heard this before. Just hear it again and think about why he would teach this. And as you hear this, just think about the stresses and anxieties you're feeling today. Matthew 6:31 and then 33 and 34. He says this, "Therefore take no thought saying, what shall we eat? Or what shall we drink? Or wherewithal shall we be clothed?" It almost sounds like all those responsible things we've told you to worry about, don't worry about.
All the adult stuff.
Don't worry about that. Verse 33, "Seek first the kingdom of God, put God first and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Take therefore no thought for tomorrow, for tomorrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof." So, I mean, you got enough on your plate today. So don't worry about tomorrow. I got you. You just focus on today. So why would Jesus teach this? And for me, it's just like, it's just God's way of trying to increase our total and utter dependence on him from day to day. That connection, that vertical connection, that vertical pairing that needs to happen every morning when we wake up. And just trust that it's all going to work out.
Are you going to tell me a story?
Oh, I'm going to tell you a story.
Full disclosure, I actually do not know what he's about.
The story yet.
This is in real time. I'm surprised.
So when I look back at the times where I've learned the most dependency on God and where the coolest miracles have happened, it's been in times of want, where my wife and I in our early married life sometimes didn't have money to buy all the groceries on our grocery list. Right? We literally had to go through and scratch off things. Well, there was this one weekend in particular. My wife had gone up to see her parents in Idaho with the kids because it was finals week and she knew I was going to be a monster. So finals were over. She was going to come back the next day, and I decided I was going to be a non-stereotypical man, and I was going to go grocery shopping, and I was going to have menus planned just like she had. She would usually do that for us early in our marriage, and wrote out a menu, got a grocery list, and every time I totaled up the list, which we had to do, and estimated costs, it always exceeded the amount of money I had in my checking account at the time. And I got frustrated. I kept scratching things, and it still exceeded the amount of my checking account till the point where I sat down in my living room, and I remember out loud just kind of laughing and saying, this is ridiculous, kind of cynically, like I work like a dog, I go to school, and I don't even make enough to provide for my family. And I had one of the most distinct, weird impressions ever, and it was as clear as day, and it was, go to the store, get what's on your list, it will all work out by the time you get to the cash register. I'm telling you, it was as clear as day. To the point where I was like, that's ridiculous, I'm not doing that, because I just saw like a really embarrassing moment coming up. Like, I'm not
dip in the river.
So I was like, I'm not doing that. And then it came again, like, go, it will work out by the time you get to the cash register. And it was so powerful. It got me on my feet, and I walked out the door, and I was getting pumped up, and I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen here, but I'm doing this. I go into the store. This is kind of creepy and funny, but I was like, maybe, you know, he could like make someone just come up to you and give you money. Maybe someone in the store right now is getting, you know, like a prompting to give me money. So I start making eye contact with with everyone I'm walking
You're like,
past.
Hey.
Hey.
Is God talking to you?
They're just getting creeped out. So I stopped that pretty soon after entering the store for fear of, you know, getting the police called on me. And I go to the aisle 1 and I get out my calculator and I'm like, I'm not going over the amount in my checking account. I'm not. And I start adding things up as I put them in my cart. I get to the end of aisle 1 and I get a prompting. Put the calculator away. Get what's on your list. It's all going to work out by the time you get to the cash register. I was so scared. I was so scared. But I was all in. So I put away my stinking calculator and I just started getting what I wanted. And I was all in. I was kind of laughing. I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. This is crazy. What am I doing? I load up my cart and I go to the back where the meats were. And I was like, I can't afford a roast this week. That was one of the things I had scratched off. And I was like, get a roast. It'll all work out. And I'm having this dilemma standing there. Like, this is ridiculous. This isn't responsible. I shouldn't be doing this. And at that time, right then, a little Macy's attendant, this college-age girl, came running up to me with her little Macy's, what do you call it, apron on? Yeah. And she said, congratulations, sir. You're standing on the magic egg. And I was like, what are you talking about? What? And I looked down and there's a sticker on the ground of an egg and it has a number on it. And apparently these are all around the store. And apparently it's near Easter season. Apparently they're like, hey, Macy's shoppers, it's magic egg time. Go find an egg and stand on it. And if you're the winner, you win a prize or whatever. I had no idea this was going on because I'm having this dilemma. I'm like kind of irked. And I'm like, oh, a magic egg. What does that mean? And she went, I don't know. And she pulls out a coupon book and she starts writing. And she goes, how about we just give you some free groceries today? And I couldn't believe it. I remember I almost just wept. And she looked at me. She saw I was kind of disturbed. She's like, is that okay? And I went, no, that's good. That's good. But I was shocked. And she gave me this coupon. I didn't even know how much it was worth. I just knew it was going to work out by the time I got to the cash register. So I got the roast, put it in my cart, went to the front, swiped my card. There was still a balance that was owed or whatever. You know, like I knew how much I could use on my card. I gave them the thing, and they said, where did you get this? And I said, the lady in the back gave it to me. And the one cashier looked at the other one and said, look what they gave this guy for the magic egg, some free groceries. And the one looked at me and said, well, you're lucky. Usually it's just like a free candy bar or something.
Oh.
That kind of connection.
God is so good.
That never would have happened to me had I not been in that moment of, I didn't know where my next, I mean, I don't want to overstate this, right? I don't want to put myself in the same camp as people that experience poverty in other parts of the world. But I'm telling you, that moment for me was as real a moment of complete reliance on God as any moment I've ever had. And so when I read about manna and quail, I see God trying to have those moments that he had with me, with them, because those change your life forever.
Thank you. That was really cool. Like, that's going to go down in Real Talk history. For sure. I've had similar experiences where it worked out. You know, mine was a open bag of flour at the store where we had no health insurance and I was so sick with lupus and we were in college and I didn't know how we were going to do it. And someone had sliced the box to get all the flour out. And so it was all open. And so the store people were like, we can't sell it. You can just take it. And I love that, the magic egg. So your manna story, I think, is such a beautiful experience of how we can all kind of maybe talk this week of where is your manna? What are you doing on the daily where you can store, where you can't store your faith and you have to rely on a daily basis to kind of fill that up. Should we jump to Exodus 17?
Yeah.
This is a story of Moses, verse 11. And it came to pass when Moses held up his hands and Israel prevailed, and when he let down his hands, Amalek prevailed.
You said it.
So there you are. right? So verse 12, and Moses' hands were heavy. This is where we get the whole sustaining. When we raise our hand to sustain someone newly called in the church, this is where it comes from. So they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat thereon, and Aaron and Hur stayed by his hands, the one on the one side and the other on the other side, and his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. So basically, if he kept his hands up, the children of Israel were okay.
Winning in this war.
Winning in this war, but if his arms came down, but he was tired. And I love the idea of, I've been in presidencies where we were very different from each other. We had very different experiences in life and skill set. And I look back and see where I was being sustained either as the president or as a counselor doing the sustaining because God had spread out our gifts, right? Yeah. Or family members or word members that sustain us. And so I love that idea and that visual of like helping hold each other's hands up so we can succeed.
Well, and I love that he's sitting on the rock.
Right?
Jesus Christ, the rock, and then other people helping him hold his hands up. And sort of just, again, this theme of God will provide.
And prevail, right?
And prevail.
Yeah.
Well,
should we give our invitation?
Yeah. For our invitation this week, we just want you to think about what your daily manna is. And think about maybe what God has provided you already. And think about what you need and what you'll ask him for this week. And it's our testimony that he hears you and he listens. And miracles happen when we rely on him. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you next time on Real Talk Come Follow Me. Do you like Real Talk Come Follow Me?
Then like and subscribe.